Hey everybody, I don't know what session this is for you guys. This is something that I thought about needing to do kind of after the fact, and I wanted to throw this in. It's probably one of the most important ones, and that is, what is the mission and vision of Grace Connection? We always say it simply put, as far as the mission goes. The mission of a church should never be different from any other. The mission of a New Testament church should never be any different than any other mission of a New Testament church, right? I don't care what denominational title you put on your church. I don't care if it's Lutheran, or Presbyterian or Methodist, or whatever name you want to put on there, Southern Baptist. The mission is not something that we come up with, okay? It's something that Jesus Christ left us with. So in Matthew 28, you'll find the mission of the church that's there. Now, you can articulate it differently, right? You can come up with fancy ways of expressing the same thing, but it really needs to be the mission that Jesus left us with. In Matthew 28, 16 through 20 is where you find the mission that he's given us, and that is to go into all the world. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to Jesus. Therefore, go into all nations, teaching them, baptizing them, teaching them everything that I've commanded you. And so our goal is to somehow identify where our mission field is. And for us, that's really simple. It's, if you take a pencil and draw out from where the church is, and you go out 50 miles in any direction, and that's our mission field. And so our goal is to go and make disciples, but Jesus coming to the disciples first and telling them to make disciples of all nations, that already implies that they are disciples of Jesus Christ. And so the first thing that we see in our mission is to be a disciple, right? You have to be a disciple. I have to be a disciple. We're not going to go out and do the next thing, which is to make disciples, right? We're not going to do that unless we are disciples of Jesus Christ. So that's our first goal in the mission of our church, is to make sure that you're a disciple. Make sure that you are being discipled. Make sure that all of our programming is set up in such a way where you become stronger and stronger in the person of Jesus Christ. And so that's our first focus, right? Our first aspect of our mission is to concentrate on you, making sure that you are a disciple of Jesus. The one way we do that, which you've probably already heard of in this session, is for you to have a public testimony of being a follower of Jesus Christ. And the public display of that, the public testimony to that is what? Yep, you got it. That's right, baptism, right? So what we're asking for is that everybody who's confessed with their mouth and believed in their heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, they follow that up by being baptized. In being baptized, you're identifying outwardly that you are a disciple of Jesus, that you want to follow him. And again, you've heard me say this even in this series, but I'm going to say it again just for posterity's sense so that you can keep coming back to it. Baptism is nothing more than an outward symbol of an inward act of the heart. And that outward symbol is taking you down under the water, which is the grave, right? Taking you under the grave, bringing you back up to a new life. And that's what baptism is all about. It's really pretty simple. It's simple in its actions. It's very complicated in what takes place in your heart. Okay, so you need to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, right? And then once you are a disciple, your goal then, your purpose in life is that mission, right? It's not really the mission of every church as much as it is the mission of every individual that makes up the body of Christ. And when we're collectively together, when we come together, we really just kind of adopt that mission. We just kind of say, this is why Jesus has called us. And so it becomes your mission. It becomes your mission and your reality to fulfill as much as it is mine. It's not that I do this because I'm the pastor of a church and I'm trying to, push us all in one direction. No, I'm trying to identify with you the same thing, that Jesus has left each one of us with a purpose and a mission to fulfill. Now, vision after that becomes, how does the local church, how do you see yourself fulfilling the mission, right? So every church does it a little differently. Every person probably does it a little differently. You have a personality that is unique to you, and idiosyncrasies that make you different than everybody else, and that's wonderful. So your style is going to be different. It's going to be unique to you. So the same is true of every church. You can go into another Southern Baptist church anywhere in our denomination, and it'll be different than Grace Connection because its pastor is different than Grace Connection. So the emphasis, the style, the things of importance, all those things are going to be unique to whoever is at the helm at the time. And so, ultimately Jesus is at the helm, and that's why all churches are should be heading in the same direction. But, what goes on in that ship has a lot to do with who the pastor is. Now, for us, the vision is, and this isn't just me, you'll hear Don talk a lot about this too. He actually preached a sermon on this that was an exceptional sermon. That was off. Anyway, the vision of the church is to understand that every Christian that goes through this world, that makes it through this world, makes it to the other side, life is going to be full of ups and downs, right? Life is going to be full of disappointments, challenges, opportunities. But we all know that when we come to Jesus Christ, everyone who comes to Jesus, he tells us they'll suffer in this world, right? Because they are now identifying with Christ, who is the enemy of the world. And so making it through this world and thinking that when I come to Jesus, that means that suddenly I've got a new home and a new car and everything just works out. My paychecks come in and I never, I always have an abundance. That nobody's ever going to get sick, that nobody's ever going to die, that nobody's ever going to disappoint me, or nobody's ever going to backstab me. All of those things are realities in this world. They just are. And as we go through this, it hurts. And this suffering really isn't all about identifying yourself with the world, because the world, everybody in the world backstabs. Everybody in the world's going to lose somebody. Somebody's going to die in their life, and that's going to be difficult. We're not talking necessarily about those commonalities in Christianity or in the world. We're talking about suffering in the sense that you are disliked, disowned, disapproved of because of the person of Jesus, right? You may lose your job because of the person of Jesus. You may not be able to live the way that they're asking you to live or do the things that you're asking you to do. And because of this person right here, because of Jesus Christ, you may not be able to keep doing what you're doing. And that's the consequence of following Jesus. That doesn't mean that Jesus is automatically going to say, well, let's find you a new job that's better than the old one. It is a consequence of being with him. And all of us, we count those costs before we come into the faith. We recognize that the value of, the reality of the kingdom of God and his coming is far greater than anything that I'm going to experience in the negative in this world. Does that make sense? So because of what I'm gaining in a right relationship with God, I'm restored to him. I know that he's coming back. Even if I make it to an old age and I die of an old age, the kingdom's still coming at that moment for me. I don't have to wait for his return, because the moment I die, as the Apostle Paul says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. That means that in that moment, the kingdom is ushered into my life in its full reality. And so for me, I recognize that what he is, who he is, what he brings is greater than anything that I'm going to go through. And so I'm willing to go through those things, okay? Then the next one is service. Every one of us, right? Every member in our church is a minister. So if you are looking at these videos and you're saying, I want to become a member of Grace Connection, what you're also saying is that I would like to be a minister at Grace Connection. So you're looking forward to plugging yourself in and participating in such a way that helps us move from where we're at to where we want to be. Okay? So every one of us, now, Bible's very clear about this. Every person who has been saved, and I'm just going to say every person who has been saved and received the gift of the Holy Spirit, and everybody receives that gift at salvation. Everybody who has received him has received a gift. Look at 1 Corinthians 12, look at Romans chapter 12. All of those areas talk about us receiving a gift. Look at Acts chapter 2. Even in there, the gifts were automatically identified when the disciples were able to speak languages they had and understand languages they had never spoken before. Okay, so everyone who comes into a relationship with Jesus in a local church has a service. Now, in here, that may be greeter, that may be maybe you clean the church, and we've talked about this in other videos, but you want to serve Jesus somehow, some way, and your spiritual gift mix should match that service, okay? So if you're a people person, you're probably doing something that involves greeting and being a part of larger groups, things like that. If you're not a people person, right? If you're an introvert, then you're probably doing stuff behind the scenes. It takes all of us to make that happen. Okay, the last one that we do is sacrifice, right? So if you are, our mission is to be a disciple of Jesus Christ and to make disciples. The way we go about doing that is we recognize that being called by him, we may be called into things that cause suffering in our lives, right? We also do it in the sense of we fulfill this mission by being in service in the local church to Jesus Christ. And finally, to recognize that it's probably it's going to take sacrifice on my part. I don't know about you, but getting up every Sunday morning and being here on a regular basis is a sacrifice. You're taking time out of your day. You're acknowledging that the body of believers is more important than the body of water that you could go float on or fish on or, wherever. And I'm not saying that I'm against vacations or I'm against time off. I'm not at all. I take it myself. But what I am saying is that this stuff takes sacrifice. The idea even of giving to the church, supporting the church financially, that's sacrificial. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to give 90% and live on 10% as J.C. Penney did. But what it does mean in my life, let me tell you what it means in my life, okay? Here's what it means in my life, right? I tithe in my life, right? I give 10% to the church. 10% of my income comes directly back to the church. And we talk about that on Sunday mornings. It's time for the presentation of tithes and, remember the other one? Offerings. Yep. So here's the other one. Now, most of you would say, well, what's the difference? Well, a tithe in the Old Testament is a certain percentage. It's identified in the New Testament for us as we take it as 10% off the top. Then I go to offerings, which is such things like building fund, maybe a missionary support, that type of thing. So if we're raising money for we're going to build a new building in 2024, let's say, I may give, I don't know how much I may give, another 10%. Now, you know what that is for me? I guarantee you that's sacrifice, because I don't always have this, right? And it takes a whole lot of discipline for me. It did. It doesn't anymore because I've been doing it for so long, but this took a lot of discipline in the beginning. 10%. Most people, when they come to Jesus, they're not living in such a way where they can afford to give 10% right off the bat. And so this takes a little bit of time for them to get there. But once they get there, now my income is based completely on, if I buy a house, if I buy a car or a truck or whatever, I don't even consider that as part of my income, because it is the sacrifice that I'm willing to make in order to be a part of or make sure that the mission of the church is taken care of. And so you're probably going to have to, you are going to have to sacrifice in the sense of living for God in such a way that not makes the income of the church proper or better or whatever. But guys, we really believe that what we're doing is about the mission of the New Testament, right? The money that comes in, the support that people give, the things that they're willing to go through and do, all of these things, and this is our vision now, right? All of these things are how we believe that the gospel calls us to fulfill the mission. So you hear us talk about who's your one a lot. And we talk about bringing that one person into the church or that one person to Jesus. And that's wonderful. If you've brought somebody in the last 6 months, you're going, yes, I brought my one. But once you identify who's your one, right, and all of these things take into place, right, I might have to suffer a little. I might have to serve. I'm going to have to serve some. I know I'm going to have to sacrifice some. And I'm going to ask or look for Jesus to lead me to who that person is that I'm supposed to bring to church. Once you've brought that person to church, and maybe even once that person comes to Jesus Christ, you know what the next question is, right? Who's your one? Right? Once you bring one to Jesus Christ, once you're a disciple of Jesus Christ, and you start making, it's not make disciple, right? It's make disciples of Jesus. Now, altogether, all of us, we can make a whole bunch of disciples, but it's always going to be who's your one? Who's your one? Who's your one? Right? Because the mission of the church never stops. And the vision of the church is always going to be implemented. So if you are looking to be a member of Grace Connection, this is what we're all about. This is the idea of the mission, the idea of the vision and how that goes about. And these things, you can look these up. These aren't ours. These are biblical practices that Jesus talks about to his disciples about how they're going to have to fulfill the kingdom mission. So guys, love having you in the sense of being interested in being a member of Grace Connection, and I hope it's something that you take the next step on. See you later.